Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and this is an episode that is going to bring the heat. We are joined by an incredible guest whose work I so deeply admire, and I know the importance of her work. Her work spans so many different things, but it's all about getting the best out of professionals, out of entrepreneurs, out of all of us as human beings on this planet. Her work spans from emotional intelligence to mindfulness to elements of neuroscience. There's so much that we're going to dig into. So I want to tell you about today's guest. Her name is Barbara Boselli. After working 15 years of leading teams in Fortune 100 companies, Barbara now empowers individuals and corporations to relate in a healthy way to today's accelerated pace of change in high stress environment, which, let's face it, between life and work, we all face all of those challenges. Through coaching and workshops that combine emotional intelligence, mindfulness, elements of neuroscience, Barbara helps employees find meaning and purpose in their work, develop resilience, and navigate stress skillfully while strengthening their capacity for focus. The outcome is happier and more productive individuals and workplaces, obviously, which we want to incorporate into our work as we grow our businesses. Whether you still have a full-time 9-to-5 job or you're full-time in your business already, Barbara is so well equipped to talk about all of this stuff. She has taught at so many organizations, including Google, the World Bank, the Kellogg School of Management. She has an MBA from the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. She's a chartered financial analyst. She's certified by Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute and by the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. She has a degree in spiritual psychology from the University of Santa Monica, my old neck of the woods. We have that in common back in Los Angeles. Barbara was born and raised in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and she now lives in Connecticut with her husband and two boys, aged 7 and 9. Barbara has been there. She's done that. She's incredible at what she does. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview today with Barbara Boselli. Barbara, holy cow, I feel like I just scratched the tip of the iceberg in that bio, but officially, welcome to the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Brian.
Heck yeah, your bio showcases so much of your credentials, of the things that you've done, the areas that you like to focus on, but listeners always love to hear it in your own words. Give us the quick version of your story. Who are you? How did you get here?
Brian, when people talk about my bio, what I always like to share is kind of the backstory of how I got where I am today. Because I had a big career transition in my 30s, and I know a lot of people, including my clients, who spend years and years thinking about their career transition. Some of them take the leap and some don't. And for me, it was not all unicorns and rainbows. Actually, there was a lot into it. For 20 years of my life, I was in business, either studying business or I was working for organizations. I went to a business college in Brazil, then I worked for a multinational organization there, and then came to the US to get my MBA and went to work for Google, which was kind of like my dream. And during those 20 years, my life was a little bit of a roller coaster because sometimes I was really happy with my career because some projects were fun and I loved the people I worked with. And honestly, I always knew that there was something else for me to do. And I oscillated during those 20 years about, okay, now I'm going to leave this job and I'm going to try something different. And then something held me back. Some belief that it wasn't for me, that I wasn't capable, that I was too old, that whatever, you name it, right? And then it wasn't until I had my kids, I was actually pregnant with my second son, that I had the perfect excuse to the external world to leave my job. I was in a high-paying, high-visibility job at Google, and having the kids is like what gave me kind of the excuse really to leave that job. And it was the best thing I did because it gave me time to really rethink my career. And it wasn't a straight path at that point. I wasn't very sure about what I was going to do. And I started trying a lot of different things. And eventually I landed where I am today. I opened my own business, coaching executives, coaching people in all walks of life, and also bringing training and different workshops to organizations, and I absolutely love it. So I love to talk about that, and I love to inspire people that might be on the fence or thinking about it to take a step forward.
Yeah, I love that overview and that backstory, Barbara. And what you talk about when you say the roller coaster, that's something that even aside from business, aside from entrepreneurship, it's something we all experience in life. So I love the fact that you took the time to sit in those feelings, be aware of those feelings, recognize your own limiting beliefs, which, hey, let's face it, when it comes to entrepreneurship, we all face those things. They never subsist. So it's fascinating to me that you've obviously taken those feelings and that awareness. I think the awareness is such a core part of the work that you do, and you've combined different things, emotional intelligence, neuroscience, all these different fields. What is it about humans? What is it about our brains that it is the most powerful thing that we have? It can be the best force for good in our lives, but it's also the one thing that sabotages us and holds us back. Where do you think those feelings come from, and how do you even begin to start attacking those or taking control of those?
Well, when we are kids, we start absorbing everything we see around us in the world, right? And the world is like gigantic, and we start creating stories to make sense of the world. So if we are told over and over again that we are good or that we are bad, that this is right and that's wrong, we start believing those things, and we start seeing the world through those lenses as if those things were right. And a lot of us growing up, we develop thoughts about ourselves, about how good we are, how lovable we are, if we're enough, we're not enough, if we fit, if we are worthy, right? And a lot of times those thoughts are not very positive, and they are developed for very good reasons. They are developed to protect us when we're kids. If our parents are telling us something, if our caregivers are telling us something, we want to believe that because we depend on them. We want to see that they're right. And throughout life, we keep those thoughts as if they were the reality about the world. It's not until we start questioning these thoughts about ourselves and about the world, about what's right and what's wrong, about who we are, that we are able to get outside of that shell and try new things. So in my case, for example, I grew up, I'll give a quick example here. In my house, my father, he was a very loving man, and he was someone that wasn't very open to a discussion. When he had an opinion, he felt that was the right opinion, and he didn't really welcome a lot of challenge in that. And so I believe from a very young age that you don't disagree with people, that that's disrespectful, that that's not, a polite thing to do, especially if it's a figure of authority. And for many years that held me back because I wouldn't speak up, I wouldn't voice my opinion. And it wasn't until I realized that what I felt was the truth about the world, that we don't disagree with people. That was actually not an absolute truth. There were actually families where if you did not voice your opinion, if you did not spoke up, that was considered disrespectful or unpolite. It meant that you were not engaging in the conversation. So when I realized that what I was seeing as an absolute truth was actually not an absolute truth, it's just something that I started believing because that worked well for me and my family. It made me have a good relationship with my father. It made me feel appreciated by him. When I realized that was not the absolute truth about the world, that gave me the opportunity to decide if I wanted to keep believing in that or not, if I wanted to keep holding back my opinions. And it gave me, it opened a lot of doors for me. And I've been working over and over in letting go of this belief and rewiring my brain. So that's where the neuroscience come in, right? If you believe something for a long time, your brain starts creating the neurons that are associated with that thought start getting really strong, and that becomes a habit. And for us to change that habit, we got to train another part of our brain that says, actually it's okay to disagree with people. And that's going to be uncomfortable at first. And the more you do it, the more natural it becomes. So, to answer your question, I feel like the brain, we start shaping it from a very young age to look a certain way. And then once we grow, we can start looking at what's serving us, what's not serving us, and then letting go of those beliefs that are just holding us back.
Yeah, I love that for so many reasons, Barbara. Listeners are for sure going to resonate with what you're sharing with us right now because they have to listen to me every week, Barbara. We talk on this show about the importance of taking mental inventory, looking at what are your belief systems. And what you just shared with us is a very scary thing that we all need to do in life, which is to first identify those beliefs and then question all of those beliefs. You said it right there at the end. Is this serving me? Is this contributing to the person I want to become, to the things I want to accomplish? We really need to question all of that. But one thing that I think is so fascinating about your work is that weaved into all of this is, as I go through your work, your website, all the stuff that you put out there, which you put out so much awesome content, the thing that I always see is you always find a way to incorporate happiness into that. It's so rooted in the work that you do. And I remember particularly in my early 20s, when I started my marketing agency in Boston, I always said to people, I was hustling, and all of us entrepreneurs, we're all hustlers. And I was saying, I'm working 60 hours a week, sometimes 80 hours a week. I was burning myself out. And I said, I'm doing it because when I reach this revenue target, then I'll be happy. And then I can start settling down. And the reality was, as I got older and wiser, and especially here in my 30s, I realized, well, maybe it's the chicken or the egg. Maybe if you become happy first, you focus on happiness, a lot of the rest of stuff has a habit of falling into place. But of course it is that chicken and the egg problem. It's easier said than done. Why is happiness such an important component of the work that you do, and where does it fit in with all this stuff happening simultaneously?
Well, I think what's really important, I feel, is for us to feel aligned with ourselves, and then everything kind of comes from that. And what you said about, I'm going to do all these things and then I'm going to be happy. That's a trap that a lot of us fall into. We feel like when I have the right body, when I have the right job, when I have time to be with my kids, then I'm going to be happy. And what I like to say to my clients, and the way I like to operate, is I can choose who I'm being today. That's a choice that I have, how I show up in this world. And once you show up like the person that you want to be, the things kind of start getting into place. So if you want to have, for example, a certain body type, if you want to feel healthy in your body, right, which a lot of us do, if we focus, okay, I'm going to exercise and I'm going to lose weight and then I'm going to be happy. What happens is that we are focusing on the process here. And when we focus on the process, it's really easy to get derailed. What I like to do for myself and work with my clients with is working on who do you need to be someone that is working out, that is, looking at what you eat. Who do you need to be? What kind of person does that? And then start being that person today so that you are already stepping into what you want to be. You bring the future to today instead of waiting for something to happen so that you can have that future. And then what you do, like eating healthy, exercising, ends up being almost like a consequence of how you're showing up in the world. And of course that, once you show up a certain way, it takes commitment to get the things you want to get. So if I am, if I'm embodying someone that is healthy, that, is in charge of my health and my body, it will take commitment from me to keep that, right? So I need to commit to work out. I need to commit to a nutritious plan. And even when I don't feel like it, because a lot of people get into this myth that, I am going to do the things when I'm motivated, when I feel like doing that. And that's another big trap, because we do what we do, not what we want to do. Like I brush my teeth every day, not because I want to brush my teeth. It's just because I'm committed to brushing them every day. Even when I don't feel like it, I still do it. So I think, it's a combination, to answer your question, of embodying who you want to be, not waiting for something to happen for you to get there, and then committing to the steps that are going to support that.
Yeah, Barbara, two really good takeaways there. I love the way that you sum that up, because what I'm really hearing there is the first one is you said it so brilliantly, and we're definitely going to pull this out as a takeaway for listeners, but you said bring the future into today. If you're waiting for something to happen, bring that future state that you're waiting for into today. Embody that person that you need to become to do those things. And then the second one, I love the way that you talk about discipline versus motivation. If we waited for us to always feel motivated, none of us would get anything done. People think that we always want to be doing these things, but discipline gets us there, and then it becomes, I'm cautious when people throw the word natural out there. Oh, it's natural. Someone looks at someone who's always working out. Oh, it's natural for them. They're into that. They weren't always. Discipline is what got them there. Barbara, I want to switch gears and ask you a little bit about this, because obviously we're talking about inside our own selves, inside our own minds, but none of us live alone on an island. All of us are, as social beings, we are surrounded by others, and those interpersonal relationships are a big part of our realities, whether it's in the context of running our businesses and growing our businesses, managing people, or even just interpersonal relationships in life. And that's why you love EQ, you love emotional intelligence. I want to hear your perspective on that and how it fits into the way that you view peak performance and people growing as people and as business leaders. And just to really load it on, Barbara, because I know you're up to the challenge. A lot of people might think, well, EQ is not something I can necessarily grow or lean into. I may not have that. Talk about all that stuff, because I know this is a big part of your work.
Yeah, so I can very much relate to that, because I used to be one of those people that believe that, either you were born with emotional intelligence, you were like a natural leader, you could communicate, you could relate to people or not. And for me, when I worked for Google, I took this training as an employee called Search Inside Yourself, the one that I'm now certified and I bring to organizations. And that was the first time in my life where I realized that everybody can learn emotional intelligence skills. So I'm going to repeat that. Everybody can learn emotional intelligence skills, just like you can grow like muscles in your body. If you do biceps, you can, right? If you do bicep curls, you can develop your bicep. You can develop emotional intelligence. You can learn it, and that can become natural for you as you train your brain for it. So there are many different steps in emotional intelligence. Understanding ourselves, how we react to situations, how we tend, what like triggers us, and then start getting that awareness so that we can start again changing what doesn't serve us. And then comes the emotional management, right? Once I know that I tend to be reactive with some things, how can I change that behavior? How can I train my brain? And a lot of it is through mindfulness, really, because mindfulness helps us bring this consciousness to the present moment and stop acting as in a reactive way, right? So if I'm someone that tends to get activated when I hear a certain kind of comment and I have awareness of that, I can develop tools to take a breath before I respond. And then look inside and see what's happening inside of me right now that I am having this urge to respond a certain way. And then I can choose my response, right? There is this famous quote from Viktor Frankl, who was a survivor of the Holocaust and a psychologist, that says that between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space, there is your possibility to choose and your freedom, something like that. So really, if we take just this one moment to think, take a breath, and decide how we want to respond to a situation instead of just being reactive and having the same behavior over and over again, we can already totally transform the way we're showing up and the way we are interacting with other people. And then the other parts of emotional intelligence are about, developing empathy and compassion for others and using that in the way we relate to people. How do we want to show up for people? How do we take what people tell us? Do we take that personally? Are we able to really listen to what people are trying to tell us, right? A lot of people A lot of times people say something with an intention, and then the impact that that has on us is different, but impact is not intention. So just those nuances and starting to be able to see all of that by looking inside first, being present in the moment, being present in the conversations, it can totally transform how we show up in the world and how we build those relationships that you're talking about, Brian, that are so important both at work and in our personal lives as well.
Barbara, so many topics just in that one answer, really deep topics and obviously complex topics that I want to go a little bit more into, because I know that listeners' eyes and ears and brains are just going to be so piqued by this that they're going to want to hear this and understand a lot more, because what I'm hearing from you as you're talking about all this stuff is really so many of your answers come back to that choice where we are the ones who start choosing the way that we show up in the world. We start choosing the way we see the world rather than all of that just happening to us. It really does. What I hear is intention, but you said the word already, mindfulness. And I feel like mindfulness is a word that we throw out way too often in the world of entrepreneurship, to the point where no one stops to think about the actual meaning of it. And I know for me personally, one thing that hit me when I was hearing someone talk about mindfulness was they said, hey, let's think about mindfulness as mindfulness. Think about how full your mind is with all these different things that are going on inside of there. Let's start becoming aware of it. And Barbara, obviously so much of your work comes from that awareness. What does mindfulness mean to you? And how do we start practicing mindfulness? Because way too many people jump straight to, oh, you need to be meditating every day. But I know mindfulness has so many different components and ways to practice it. What's some of your favorite ways?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because most of the time, we are either ruminating about the past. So think about, I should have done this differently. I shouldn't have said that. I should have gone here, right? All the things that happened. Or we are planning, or even more often worrying about the future. Rarely we are right here, right now, in this present moment. And the only thing that we really have is the present moment. The past is gone. The future is totally uncertain, right? Think about COVID. We all thought that, we're going to keep going with your lives, and then suddenly everything changed. And so the only thing we really have is the present. And when we spend our time thinking about the past and the future, we miss the opportunity of being present. And when we're not present, we miss out on a lot of things. We don't really listen to what people say. We don't really enjoy the moments with our family and our friends because, again, we are worrying or we are remembering about the past. We don't step into that freedom to choose how we want to respond to situations because we end up reacting in a way that is not thoughtful. So mindfulness is about being aware, being in the present moment. And meditation is one way to train our brains to be more mindful because, again, just like you can train a muscle in your body to become stronger, we can train our brain to be more focused and more present at this moment. And when we meditate, we like the mindfulness meditation, which is about, either bringing your attention to an object like your breath, and whenever your mind wanders, you come back to the breath and you just keep doing that over and over again. You are really training your brain. So people think that if you're meditating and then your mind wanders, you're doing something wrong. And I think it's really important for all of us to realize that as human beings, that's what our brain does. Our brain starts wandering. And the meditation is about this ability to bring the focus back to the breath or to whatever object you are using so that you can start training your brain to, notice that it's wandering and then bring it back. Notice and bring it back. And really exercise that muscle so that it becomes more natural for you to be present in the moment and focus so that you can really experience this moment. And, going back to your previous questions about happiness, right? It's really hard, if not impossible, to feel happy if you're not experiencing the moment. Because otherwise, you can really be working hard to get a promotion or to buy a house or to go on a trip, whatever that is. And then once you get it, if you're not there to enjoy it fully, the happiness is not going to come, right? So the basis for everything, in the way I see it, is the ability to be right here, right now. And just to finalize this topic, when we are right here, right now, and we are able to see that, in this very moment, everything is okay, right? I'm not worrying about what's coming next. I am not ruminating about what already happened. I'm just in this moment, breathing, alive, healthy. Even if I'm not super healthy, like I'm still okay, right? Most of us are okay, unless you are really in a very dire situation of hunger or something like that. But most of us are okay. And what gets us outside of this feeling of being okay are our thoughts, our fears, our worries. So if we can be present, it's a lot easier for us to just be in this state of joy and happiness.
Yeah, Barbara, I'm going to call this out for listeners right now. Listeners, I'm speaking directly to you because Barbara is really challenging all of us here today. How many of her answers come back to that awareness, whether it's the awareness of who we are, the awareness of our own beliefs, the awareness of what's going on, all that busy stuff that's inside of all of our minds. How often are Barbara's insights coming back to that base level of awareness? So Barbara, I love hearing you talk about that stuff. Time is for sure flying in this interview, but there's two things that I know I want to go into before I let you go here today. And one of which is, listeners know that we always ask our guests, what's your zone of genius? What makes you unique and powerful and effective in the work that you do? And Barbara, I loved your answer because you went straight to active listening. And it's obviously, in conversation I've got to have with you already, I can see that it's something that you take it in and you make sure that you address the very nature of things that whoever you're talking to is bringing up, so that you can meet them where they are, which I think is such an important trait for all of us as business owners and business leaders and leaders in our own lives. Talk to us about that active listening. How does that play into your work? Why is it something that you think is so powerful for, hey, you're an entrepreneur just like the rest of us. Why is it so powerful in particular for us as entrepreneurs?
Most of us, when we're in conversation, we are already either trying to decide how we're going to respond to something. And I just noticed me doing that as you were talking now, which is really funny. But, we are already trying to see, okay, what smart thing I'm going to say next? Or we are trying to resolve the problem of the other person that's, across from us. Or we are really good also about hijacking the conversation. So if someone is telling you, I'm having, I have this person in my team that is really hard, and then we say, oh, me too. I also have someone in my team that's like that. Let me tell you about that. So we hijack the conversation. And when we do that, we really don't give the opportunity for the other person to speak and for us to respond. And then we all miss out because we are in different planets. The person is saying one thing, we are understanding something else, and the communication just doesn't flow. And we miss out so much. We have miscommunication, we have misunderstandings, we have missed opportunities. So really like stopping to listen to people, giving them the gift of our attention enables us to let them speak, to hear, and also to hear what they're not even saying. Because often people say one thing, but they mean something else. They assume you already know something, or they are uncomfortable saying something. So if we really are connected and paying attention, there's so much that can open up in that conversation and, take us like to many new places.
Yeah, amen to that. I think that really, your love for conversation, obviously, I'm biased as a podcast host, but I think conversations are really at the root of so much connection, and allowing that room that you talked about to just listen, not the room to say, okay, what am I going to say next? But allowing that room to listen really deepens those connections. So it's something we can all get better at. Listeners, that is such a challenge for us. We get, especially, I'm going to call out because I hear from so many of you listeners, when we're in sales conversations, we're more worried about our quote unquote script. We're so concerned about us having a perfect sales script and overcoming objections that we forget about listening to the other side. So Barbara, really valuable insights there. The last thing I want to ask you about is entrepreneur to entrepreneur, is that I love the part of your entrepreneurial story where you worked in corporate America and until your late 30s, and you had convinced yourself, it's too late to make a switch. Obviously, you became a mom. There's so much that was happening, but you're practicing what you preach, is that in your work, you help other people level up, get out of themselves the best that they can possibly be. You lived that. It's not an easy transition. I want to remind every single listener who's saying, well, Barbara's really good at this. She had a really good career. Now she started a business. Listeners, it's never easy to make that transition. Barbara, talk to us about that, because that's a big life transition and choice that you made that obviously you've grown into. I want to hear about that transition, particularly in your late 30s.
Yeah, so I talked a little bit in the beginning, but I had a lot of beliefs about why that was not possible for me to transition to a new career, to start over. Like, I felt that everything that I had invested in my previous career would go to waste, and it couldn't be further from the truth. Even though I spent 20 years in a career that I wasn't maybe like 100% fulfilled, I don't regret a minute of it, because all the experience, all the expertise that I gained during those 20 years were essential for me being where I am today. So that's one thing. The other thing I'm going to say is when I finally left my job and I was kind of starting to explore where I was going to go next, there was a time where I was very iffy. Like, I would think about something and then not follow through. Think about and give me all the reasons why that wasn't going to work. And eventually I was able to get out of that wheel and just go for it, right? I started doing things. I enrolled for a training. I started reaching out to people. And when I started that movement, things just happened. And it's not magic, because like when you put the energy into something, you start creating that for yourself. And I started believing that this was possible. And the more I believed, the more it became possible. So one thing started leading to the other. So if you are, someone that's considering a career change, and there are many ways to do this. I quit my job and started something new because I was in a place in my life where that was possible. For many of us, that's not, the best case. It's probably more appropriate to kind of start doing something on the side and then transition at some point. So there's no formula on how to do that. But what I'm going to say is that I truly believe that wherever we put our time and our effort, truly, we can accomplish. In the days that we live today, if we say, I don't know how to do something, that's almost childish. Because with the internet out there, with the opportunities that we have for networking online, for learning through podcasts like this, and millions of trainings that are available, the way we can reach people through the internet, I really don't believe that there is anything there that we can't do because we don't know how to, because we can learn. And for those of us that feel like I don't have time for this, which is something that my clients come to me very often with, again, and this could be a topic for a whole other conversation, but when people tell me, I don't have time, what I usually find out is that their problem is not time management, but it's people pleasing or lack of focus. Because when we are focused and we are not so worried about people pleasing, we can get pretty much anything done. We can focus on what's important, and we can move the needle on our side project or whatever it is in our life that we want to move forward with.
Yes, Barbara, right until the very end, challenging all of us listeners all over the world to really step into that and blow past all of our limiting beliefs. But you guys heard it from Barbara right here, right now. She had those limiting beliefs as well, and she had to blast through them in her late 30s in particular to leave behind a really awesome career that she had built up over decades. So I love those insights, Barbara. So many challenges to us as entrepreneurs and wantrepreneurs all over the world. I know that listeners are going to be keen to learn more about your work. I'm just going to plug this really quick before I throw the baton over to your way. Your website is awesome. When we were researching guests to invite onto the show this month, it really caught our eye. Your headline on your website is, "Has your mind wandered in the past 60 seconds?" And you go straight into talking about some of the things, for better and for worse, that our minds do. So your website has so much awesome language, helpful resources, ways to think and question our own beliefs that I'm really excited for listeners to get to check out more of your work. So tell them where to go from here, Barbara. If listeners want to know more about you, your work at BNOW, where should they head from here?
Thank you, Brian. So my website is BNOWconsulting.com. So that's BNOW consulting.com. And actually, I want to acknowledge everybody that chose to take the time to listen to this podcast and invest in your own growth. And I am going to leave a special resource for you. So if you go to BNOW Consulting /W2E, so entrepreneur to entrepreneur, so the letter W, the number 2, and the letter E, you're going to be able to download an amazing worksheet about time management. So that was the last topic that I talked about, which is a step-by-step way to get to accomplish whatever you want to accomplish, how to find the focus, how to choose your high payoff activities so that you can really accomplish the things you want to accomplish. So as an entrepreneur, as if you have a family and you feel divided between your priorities, whatever that is, that worksheet is going to help you find your priorities and focus on what's more important for you.
Yes, listeners, you all know the drill. Barbara just dropped an awesome goodie on all of us. So you can find those links down below wherever it is that you're tuning into today's episode. Her business website is at BNOWconsulting.com. That's the letter B, nowconsulting.com. And that super special link, we're so appreciative of you for sharing that with us, Barbara, is BNOWconsulting.com/W2E for the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. That is a special just for you listeners. So Barbara, thank you so much for being so generous with your time, your experiences, your insights. You've challenged us in so many ways, which I knew that you would. So thanks for coming on to the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
You're very welcome, Brian. And I acknowledge you for, bringing all this content to people that are in this world of entrepreneurship that can be, challenging at times.
Yes, thank you so much.